Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to carry the theme on. Hannah, you talked a lot about authenticity in the last panel, but today we're going to focus on Gen Z and authenticity. And I'm really excited about this panel in particular because it's very unique in that we're going to come from the angle of B to B to C and also restaurants as well. So slightly different angle when you think about Gen Z. So some of us are new up here, so do you mind starting to introduce?
Yes, of course. So hi, I'm Peyton Perry. I am the social media manager with a focus on content and creators at Dropbox, which is a cloud storage company. I've worked in social media for a little over 8 years now. Before that, I was at Kinder Scott, which is a jewelry brand kind of based in Austin, but it's around nationally. And I think I kind of probably gave it away by having a deep side part. I am a millennial. However, all of my coworkers think that I'm Gen Z. So I took that as a sign that I could be on this panel and talk to it. So I'm really excited to be here and to be with all these amazing women.
I heard side parts are really coming back anyways.
It works for me.
A side part. I'm so confused. Gina.
Hello, I'm Gina. I am a senior content marketing manager at Indeed. I run the channel strategy for our YouTube channel. I'm also on a podcast with the wonderful Jen over here. I've been in Indeed for it's going to be 3 years in a couple months. Before that, I was at TED, and before that, I was at Paramount Plus, running the channels at BET. And really, I just like to say I post silly little videos. So I'm also a millennial, and people think I'm Gen Z. So I will move my hair to do a deep side part, and I should have worn skinny jeans today.
Well, as Gina said, I'm Jen Herrity. I am also a senior marketing manager at Indeed. I manage the video production side of our YouTube strategy. I've been with Indeed for about 7 years, and actually my background is in career coaching. So I am deeply tied to Indeed's mission, and I am just so excited that the content that we create is truly helpful. And another millennial on the table, but I do have a Gen Z daughter, so she is kind of like my test group. So anytime I'm creating content, wanting to check in with her to say, hey, are these still the pain points, right? She's kind of like my direct line to the Gen Z audience.
Everyone was like, question mark? You have a Gen Z daughter? That makes no sense, because she's so youthful.
She's so kind to me.
And then y'all know me. You want to introduce yourself? And y'all know me too.
Yeah, okay.
All right, let's get into it. All right, the first question is for Jen and Gina. All right, so how does Indeed maintain brand authenticity while tailoring its messages to Gen Z, especially in a place like job searching, which can feel corporate or impersonal at times?
Yeah, I can start this off, yeah. I mean, Gen Z loves transparency, right? Like, they want the truth, and they are going to social media to help in their job search. So one thing that we do is we are a search-based strategy. We are answering those search queries, and we try to do it in a really relatable way. So we create this like edutainment content that's kind of equal parts educational, equal parts entertaining, and we really try to speak to job seekers in a way that they can understand, and so kind of try to lean into those YouTube trends that they're already seeing. So we are creating a day in the life content, and that's already something that they're used to on the platform, but we actually show a day in the life of the job. We're not just like, oh, now I'm making my coffee, now I'm doing this. We're like, this is what it takes to succeed in the role. So I think that that's something that sets us apart as a brand, acting as a creator on the platform. And then also, if it is something that's purely educational, just having more of a fun spin to it has really made it, one, fun for us to make the content, but also it makes it fun for people to watch.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to authenticity, and especially when you're working for a large brand like Indeed, we often have to find this balance, especially with video content on YouTube, between how do we make sure this content looks polished and is a good representation of the brand, but also very authentic so that it's approachable. And so with the series that Gina mentioned, which is our Day in the Life series, we show real people. We follow real medical assistants, real school bus drivers, real nurses throughout their entire day. And what we really take to heart is how do we set this apart and really utilize the data that Indeed as a brand has access to. And so we're not just showing and giving that inside view, we're making sure that we're answering those search terms. What questions does somebody have? What would they need to know about this particular role if they were wanting to get into it? So we talk about skills, we talk about educational requirements. So we are giving that deep inside look, but we're also using SEO to inform the content. So that's one way in which we try to make sure we're doing right, and really representing the brand well, but also answering the questions that Gen Z has.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine balance for sure, and especially since you hit it, they crave truth, and if you don't give it to them, they will know. They will seek it out. I love that. Okay, Hannah, how do you create content that resonates with Gen Z's values of transparency and authenticity while balancing the fun, food-centric culture of hot toddy?
I think the most important thing for us specifically is, when you look at Gen Z values, they're very focused on brands and people improving their eco-credentials. So for us, that comes to life through, again, as I mentioned, supporting regenerative farms and really demystifying our operations. I think it's something that not enough restaurant brands do, is demystifying their operations and really showing, here's how we prep your food, here's where your food comes from. So, historically, a lot of our force of nature, regenerative-minded messaging has been in long-form content on YouTube. I have started working with creators and also with our paid team to really figure out how we can make that come to life on paid social and organic social, more lowbrow, lo-fi. And so I don't necessarily think it's the heavy graphical, in-your-face messaging, but it's just lightly kind of pushing that storytelling out through your content and remaining, again, transparent about what we're serving you.
Yeah, I love that sneak peek, behind the curtain of where the food is coming from and making sure that it's really in touch with their values as well. Let's move on a little bit to digital innovation. So Peyton, with the rise of TikTok and short form video content, how has Dropbox leveraged these platforms to reach Gen Z? And what types of content or campaigns have been the most successful for you?
Yeah, so a little bit of background. When I started at Dropbox, they didn't have an existing presence on TikTok. I also don't think that they'd ever posted a reel before, so they really weren't leaning into this short-form video content that resonates. And so it was a little jarring for me coming from Kendra Scott, where we had just embraced the Gen Z virality of Alabama Rush Talk. Now, if you're not familiar with Rush Talk, that's okay, you're in great company, because no one at Dropbox was familiar with Rush Talk either. And I think just seeing that meant that there was this need internally for education, getting people kind of their buy-in of, okay, Gen Z is an important audience for us, it's an important audience for our product. TikTok is really important. Creating content of our brand, that we have this established brand, but here's how we can translate it in a way. And it's a little uncomfortable, but the success will follow. So kind of going through that, I think Dropbox is a great product for Gen Z. It allows flexibility, it allows non-traditional work, it allows creativity and collaboration. And so even this last week, Alex Earl recorded a day in my work life, and she was using Dropbox, which was such a pinch me moment. And I think with that insight of how Gen Z works, we took those things and kind of developed our content strategy. So save-worthy tips and tricks that would work for them, and entertaining content that works on the platform but also is about our brand. And then lastly, we use the platforms a lot for social listening, seeing what people are saying about Dropbox, seeing what Gen Z cares about when it comes to work as well. And so as far as content that's worked well for us, I thought I'd share an example that's relevant to this week. So nothing against any of the other F1 teams, but we announced this year that we are an official partner of the McLaren F1 team, which has been so exciting. I was not initially an F1 fan, haven't watched Drive to Survive, but I am definitely a fan now. And I have loved getting to be partners with them. And for our brand, it's the first year that we're partnering with an F1 team, so we're trying to find ways to bring it to life. And our brand team made this amazing film. And I call it a film, it's 7 minutes, so it's not really a film, but it's beautifully produced. And that's great, but if social and TikTok is one of your ways you want to distribute this video, a highly produced brand film isn't the way that's going to resonate. And TikTok has such a huge audience and a crossover audience for Gen Z and F1. So we took this longer film, and knowing that on TikTok there's kind of been this trend towards longer form content that's broken up into chapters, we took our 7-minute video and did exactly that, and it worked so well. And so everyone was excited to come back, see what the next chapter was going to be, see what the next piece of content was going to be, and it helped kind of prolong our engagement. So I think what I learned from that, my advice for you all as well would be, is that, test and learn, try different formats out. If you have, a beautiful branded asset, think of ways that you can reimagine it for Gen Z. And then, try out different platforms. We've had a lot of success with YouTube Shorts as well. And my last tip, which maybe the other F1 teams would disagree with, is it's always helpful to have Lando Norris in your content. So the Gen Z girls love it.
Love it. All right. Same topic of digital innovation for Jen and Gina. Indeed is a major player in the job market, but what digital innovations or social media tactics have you used to break through and capture the attention of that younger workforce, especially post-pandemic?
Okay. I mean, we are in a position that we don't take lightly, and indeed we're the #1 job search, site in the world. And so, I think for younger generations, and I think just all generations, we're trying to really expand how people think about Indeed. We don't want to just be the job site that you go to when you're looking for your next opportunity. We want to be your career partner. We want to be your companion. And so when we think about the way in which we want to reach audiences like Gen Z, we've got to be where they are. And we've got to be available on multiple platforms. So in addition to being on YouTube, as Gina mentioned, we launched a job seeker podcast. And this is the first kind of job seeker focused podcast that Indeed had launched. We just wrapped up our 4th season, or we're wrapped up our 3rd season. We're starting production for our 4th. So really looking at what are the different avenues and how are audiences and younger audiences engaging with it. And it's actually really interesting because what we noticed is we had done a lot of promotion for the podcast on Spotify, and even though, when we did those promotions, we actually saw an additional increase in engagement on Apple. And so just thinking about we might be reaching people in one venue, but they're going to go back and listen to us or engage with us in the space that they feel most comfortable. So I think just being open to testing, like Peyton had mentioned, is just really important, and just trying to see where audiences are and find your space there. You don't want to force something because that's very inauthentic, and they can really sense when you're just trying to capture their attention.
Yeah, and I think even Jenny mentioned it earlier with the global social team is letting the people who do the thing, right? There are so many career advice creators out there. So it's really figuring out what their audiences are doing, but also Indeed acts as a career advice creator on these platforms. We're not acting as a brand on these platforms. So we're really creating content and using these career advice creators as our competitors. We don't look to we do monitor LinkedIn or Google Careers, but they're not creating this always on career advice content. It really is these individual creators who are Gen Z, who are millennials, that Gen Z trusts to say, oh, this is how I should negotiate my salary. These are the interview tips I should be listening to. So we really do take those models of how they're creating the content and how they're getting people to stop and watch. And that's kind of how we're approaching our content strategy.
Amazing, amazing. Let's talk about community engagement now. Hannah, how has Hot Dotty integrated influencers into its strategy to build trust and authenticity with Gen Z? And what's the balance between paid partnerships and organic content?
Good question. I mean, fundamentally, we see our influencer and creator partners as an extension of our brand versus just a transaction. So I think that's the first point. You know, again, when I joined the brand, and to be honest, even at this moment, we don't amplify any of our influencer content. In the last 90 days, we've hit almost 2 million impressions by not amplifying and honestly just selecting the right partners. So, you know, I think number one, it's really important when you're evaluating your influencer partner to really analyze their page. You know, follower metrics for me personally, I think is vanity. A lot of people nowadays buy their followers, and even someone I found on my feed yesterday, I was like scrolling down her follower list and it was all fake accounts. And that translates into their engagement, right? If you have 500,000 followers and 100 likes and 2 comments, like something's not adding up. So I think that's the first thing when you're trying to find creators to authentically work with. I also think it's really thinking about, I heard someone mention it earlier, a really 360 approach to your marketing and ensuring that your influencer content and honestly social media content in general is integrated with your broader marketing plan and not allowing your teams to work in a silo. So for us, you know, all of our influencer partners, we're strictly promoting our Burger of the Month, which is great, but there's a lot more to our brand than just our Burger of the Month. It's our quality story, our heritage, our diversity, our people training, and again, those core values that, you know, Gen Z is really passionate about. So I think you really have to keep all of that into account. And then to your question about the balance, again, we don't amplify our content. Yes, I know I had to pay someone $5,000 for something, but I paid someone $5,000 and I got almost 1 million views, and we saw a sales lift in that. So I think, again, when it comes to influencer marketing, a lot of people are like, how do you measure that? And to your question earlier, like, how does your CFO, you know, measure that kind of stuff? It's really looking at incremental lift and like trends and things like that, to just really see, hey, is there anywhere that we can notate a spike being from an influencer partner or a certain piece of content? Like our National Cheeseburger Day in September, we wanted to do an in-store experience, and again, we're not really big on discounting, so I was like, let's make a Willy Wonka golden ticket and people can scratch it, and that gets people in the restaurant. We had 50 tickets per restaurant. By 1 o'clock, most of our locations had sold out of the product and the scratch off. But when you think about, you know, the marketing behind that, people were going in because they wanted free burgers for a year, which we had 10 grand prize winners, but every single person who scratched something got a shareable or a shake or exclusive swag. Like everyone got something. And so, you know, in that, that day specifically, we saw a 9% lift in our Burger of the Month, which was come in by the Burger of the Month, every single person will get a scratch off. So it's just finding those ways to kind of drive that engagement with your brand that is more of a low lift and doesn't have to necessarily have that paid amplification behind it.
Good advice, it's so creative. Peyton, how do you incorporate content creators into Dropbox's broader brand narrative to foster a community that feels authentic, especially among Gen Z content creators who value creative freedom?
Yeah, so I think I'll break it down into 2 parts. So the first part kind of about how we work it into our brand narrative. So Dropbox has a goal of making work human, and even internally we talk a lot about our tone of voice, and we don't want to overcomplicate it or sound like a tech tool. We want to be human. And when you're thinking about your social feeds, one of the best ways to show up and be human is have humans on your social feeds and have them building relationships. And Gina, I think you said it well, like Gen Z creators understand the platform and they understand the audience, so they know what will resonate with them. And so that's kind of how we weave it into our brand narrative, is that it's all a part of this, like making work more human. Now, as far as creative freedom with Gen Z creators, it is definitely tricky, but if you aren't empowering them, you're not going to get the return on your content. And so if you work in tech, you have probably worked with a product marketing manager who is very particular about their products and how they're being messaged out there. But I mean, in any industry, there is someone that you're working with who is very particular about the product and how it's being messaged. And so I've worked really hard internally to be communicative and build strong relationships with those product marketing managers so that they trust me and that they can empower me to then take that messaging and then go find Gen Z creators and disseminate that information into them. And so I think working within Gen Z creators and kind of letting the leash a little bit loose, I have trust in them. I've worked really hard on those relationships as well. So I've worked really hard to source those creators. I'm very in quick communication with them. And it's been great building those strong relationships built in trust, both internally and externally. And so I think what's so great about our Gen Z creators too is that we have that trust that they know when they can kind of pull a little bit further and incorporate ASMR into a UGC video, or when to pull it back a little bit and make it be more problem solution content. So I think my biggest piece of advice, if you are wanting to create content with creators and incorporate that into your brand narrative, is just build really strong relationships founded on trust, both internally with your teams so that you have their buy-in, but also externally with those creators so that you have their trust as well.
Yeah, that internal buy-in is so important to allow you to do what you really want to do. Brand values and impact. Indeed, team. Indeedians. Gen Z is known for aligning with brands that take a stand on social and environmental issues. How does Indeed incorporate its brand values into its messaging in a way that feels authentic and not performative to this audience?
Yeah, I mean, you probably heard it all day, better work. It's something that we are really, really cognizant of, and I think we are on the job seeker team, so I think we have a really, really unique position where our content is specifically targeted to job seekers. We're not trying to speak to employers, we're specifically speaking to people who are looking for jobs. So whether it's that A Day in the Life series where we're showing real jobs and real stories, or it is that interview content, or it's the podcast where we can candidly say, yeah, finding a job is hard, but we always try to offer a solution at the end of the day. So I think that it's not that difficult for us to have our brand values at the forefront of our content, because we are offering that solution for better work in every piece of content that we are creating, especially when we're creating content around our product offerings, or even just plugging our products in our content, because we're Indeed is that solution for you to find better work.
Yeah, I think with the new, and not necessarily new, but the amplified emphasis on skills first hiring, really understanding that people have so many transferable skills and gain skills in a lot of different ways. And so with college age students like Gen Z, in my former life, I actually worked in the career services office at UT Austin. I worked with comm students. And there were so many that got to graduation not even knowing what they wanted to do. They signed on to deciding their major at 18. And passions change, interests change, and sometimes the job market changes, right? The job they thought they were gonna land when they graduated may not be available. So they really have to think about, how do I use this skill set that I have? And the ability to go to college is a privilege, and so there are a lot of people that don't have access to that, and that doesn't mean that they don't have valuable transferable skills. And so one of the great things that we get to do at Indeed, and with the content that we create, we have a courses series which shows people how to demonstrate skills they already have in interviews. So thinking about transferable skills and really showing them, this is how you talk about them. These are the examples that you can share so that you're effectively communicating skills you already have and making those connections for employers. So that's content I get really excited about.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of how do you get the experience without having the experience?
Yeah.
And so I love that you're really boiling down to the skills and focusing on that and pulling that through with Gen Z?
Yeah, and I think that's like, you know, from like a qualitative standpoint, those are literally the comments we get on our videos. They're like, how do you get experience if you've never done a job? So I think we answer that question with our videos. We're like, here's how to explain the experience you already have by being in clubs and organizations, and we really just try to empower these younger job seekers. And you know, when we were looking for jobs, we didn't have these answers, right? Or we did have to go to career services, and if you were like me and you didn't want to do that, you were just like, I wonder what I'm supposed to do. So I think just like creating this content has been so amazing because we're really just answering those questions that people have. But I think going back to your question, I think our brand values kind of speak for themselves. So every piece of content we make, we try to just put that at the forefront.
For sure, for sure. Next up, let's get the crystal ball out and let's talk about the future of Gen Z. So, for all of the panelists up here, as digital innovation continues to evolve, where do you see the future of Gen Z engagement headed? What new trends or technologies are you excited to experiment with to maintain authenticity while still driving innovation? That was a mouthful.
I can start. I, over the last year, have loved watching Substack explode. I follow so many Substacks. I subscribe to a couple different Gen Z writers, and I think it's so interesting to watch Substack grow and see it grow also too as a social platform, because it reminds me of like the 2008 to 2012 like blog explosion. We're just all cyclical. But I think something that's great about Substack too is you know that you have a very engaged audience when you partner with a creator there. They have a community that they're building, and like these Gen Z creators have a very authentic community that's willing to pay them money to hear their thoughts and opinions. And so having that trusted audience, I think, is really interesting. And then also too, getting to empower Gen Z creators who are able to monetize their content through Substack and their audience, but also through brand partnerships. So I'm really interested in looking at that in 2025 with our head of influencer.
Yeah, I mean, Jen has such a good answer to this. So I don't want to like cloud on her answer, but
She said, I don't want to, but
I will answer. I just think the creator economy is just something that is such a continuing to change industry, right? Like it's just going to continue to evolve. And so I think just brands continuing to engage with creators and how they can be kind of the future of marketing, because a lot of these creators, like Jen and I were at VidCon earlier this year, like these creators have created their own businesses and their own marketing companies. So I think that really is the future of speaking to Gen Z, is listening to these creators, because that's who Gen Z is listening to.
Well, and they're the audience, right? And they know the audience really well. And so, Patrick, actually, we missed part of your talk earlier because we were meeting with some Gen Z content creators who are interested in partnering with us. And so what we're finding is that there are creators that are reaching out and saying, hey, like, we know Gen Z has these questions and they have, you know, they're looking for answers, and, you know, we're answering them this way, but we think we can make some really great content together. And so we're finding some natural alignment. And so, yes, content creation with Gen Z content creators is really great. I would also say there's a lot of technological advances that we haven't even fully leveraged. I know that virtual reality and augmented reality are not necessarily new technologies, but access to them is. And so we have great partners like Goodwill Technologies that actually have, you know, VR sets in their, you know, job and workforce training centers, which allow people to try different occupations out, to give them a sense of what these jobs are. And I think that's something really great that comes from Gen Z, which is this need to try before you buy. They're so curious, and so they almost demand that we show them, you know, we give them this information. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity to show more roles because, you know, it's a lot different. Gina and I were talking about this earlier. You know, when I was a kid and people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. You know, did I know that one day I could make YouTube videos for a living? No, my dad says I have the most millennial job he's ever heard of. You know, one of the day in the life episodes we did was for a cannabis cultivation technician. You know, that's a job you can actually find on Indeed. You know, people don't know this.
Or a solar power technician, like.
Yeah, there are so many different jobs out there, and giving people that information and giving them the ability to really kind of see what it takes to do that role is just, like, it's really exciting, and I think we'll see more of that just with more technological advances.
Yeah, for sure, they're so curious. Hannah?
And then for me in the restaurant space, you know, I think regardless if you understand them, Gen Z is a very critical demographic to engage with, especially as their disposable income and their purchasing power continues to increase. You know, again, I've talked a little bit about values and, you know, us doing regenerative farming. I think moving forward, Gen Z are going to continue to push brands and influencers alike to improve their eco-credentials, to lead with authenticity, to build trust. And so for us, I think those are all components that we want to focus on. And again, that will come to life through short-form content. You know, you can go on our YouTube channel and watch a 30-minute video about Rome Ranch, which is, you know, force of nature, and it's out in Fredericksburg, and that's where we get our beef and bison meat. But Gen Z is not, you know, that type of content they're not going to YouTube for. So for us, it's just trying to reimagine that onto our social channels in a more organic way, and also provide, you know, experiences. So, you know, something I've looked at is, you know, getting some Gen Z and our top guests and some influencer partners to actually go out to Fredericksburg and like see in person like where we are getting our proteins from. I think that'll help bridge that gap a little bit.
For sure. Each of you have demonstrated that you are true Gen Z experts. So with that, what is one piece of advice that you give to brands looking to build a strong, authentic connection with Gen Z?
Yeah, I can start it. I think that my advice would be embrace humility and listen and learn. And so what that means is get on TikTok, start scrolling, watch the back to school hauls that Gen Z is creating. Understand why the leopard print hoodie from Abercrombie is selling out right now. Like, while that maybe isn't relevant to your industry, understanding the audience and what they care about and how they're speaking, you'll be able to more effectively join the conversation and have that authenticity. And I think then, you know, success, creativity, all those things will follow.
I need to learn about the hoodie.
Selling out.
I know. I would just say hire Gen Z. Like, they are in the workforce now. I think that because of how we've been talking about Gen Z over the past few years, there's this misconception that they're very young consumers, but now they're workers. Like, they are actually in the workforce. So I think that if we hire Gen Z workers, we can learn more about Gen Z, right? I'm not saying like every time you're in a meeting, pull in Billy, the one Gen Z worker from his cubicle, to be like, is this what Gen Z is talking about? But I do think there's power in hiring the people you want to speak to, because they deserve to be in those rooms and they deserve to have their voices be heard in a very meaningful way.
Gina makes that example because she's the one that we usually pull into meetings because she's the closest to Gen Z.
And look at me now.
No, I think it's just like maintaining that authenticity and not trying to force a connection. You know, really just try to provide value and not necessarily expect something immediate in return. People really resonate when you just want to, like, they resonate with you when they know you're just trying to help, right? You're just trying to help them, and for us, it's to help them find jobs, find better work. And so the more that you can continue to make those like meaningful and authentic connections with Gen Z, you know, the better relationship you're going to have with them. And it's not just an immediate relationship, right? They're going to be your partner and your audience, like, for years to come.
For me, transparency is your best friend. Again, in the restaurant industry, that comes back to us showing our sourcing, how we're prepping the people behind the brand and our brand story. But I want to reiterate a point that I made earlier. Authenticity does not mean you have to be flawless. It just means you have to like showcase the right side of you and your core values. So it definitely doesn't mean flawless. It just means being real and transparent.
No one is flawless, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Except Jen in the power suit.
Yeah, the power suit is giving.
Isn't the shoulder pad?
Yes, the shoulder pads.
I love that the shoulder pads are coming back. Okay, if anybody has any questions, we're happy to chat. Go for it.
How are you guys thinking about paid media within your influencer strategy, if it's something that you guys have explored? Because we're trying to learn.
I would just say, like, especially for us, like, we're just dabbling in paid recently, like, because we are a fully organic strategy on YouTube, and especially with content, influencers are very iffy about using paid. So I would just say, you know, try organic, like try, like, you know, you were saying, like try to just see how people respond to the content organically, but then also Peyton was saying, like, really leverage that relationship and then see if they're open to paid, right? Because it's like a lot of these creators, like they understand the ecosystem. They know the difference between paid and organic metrics. So like, I think just making sure that you're being transparent with them and kind of talking about it, and you can leverage those relationships. So that's kind of my my advice, but it's easier said than done.
I would say there's a couple things you can think about. Obviously, I don't know what industry you're in, but you know, a lot of people think of influencer marketing as just paying for a sponsored post. There's also things like whitelisting that doesn't even need to live on their platform. It's just set up as an ad. So if you have an influencer or creator or even a certain audience you're looking to go after, like you can do those more white label, dark ad type of initiatives versus, you know, hoping you can rely on that content to drive sales or awareness or whatever it may be on your own page. So always think about ways of, you know, not taking advantage, but utilizing a creator's audience if that's, you know, your target demographic.
Any other questions? No?
That's it for today, I think, right?
I know, I think that's a wrap, y'all.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much.